Hello and welcome to my tutorial series on the C programming. In this first tutorial video, we are going to set up our environment using different compilers. One compiler which we are going to use is the MinGW. Another compiler which we are going to use is from the Microsoft Visual Studio compiler, MSVC. And the another compiler, if you are using some hardware specific compilers such as the CUDA, then I'm going to demonstrate that also with this tutorial. And apart from this, if you are using some cloud-based platform such as GitHub Codespace, how you can utilize the VS Code to utilize as an environment, that we are going to see with this first tutorial. Now let's go through the environment setup process. So in the first, we will go with the first setup process, MinGW64 with MSys2. So here I have already attached the link for the Microsoft provided setup guideline reference. So you can go through that and you can install the setup. Two important steps are the downloading the MSys2 and downloading the MinGW with this MSys2 command. Now let's try to run our program using this setup. So let's open our C program, and here you can just type C or C++ IntelliSense configuration. And here you can see the setup is available at two different paths, MinGW64 and UCRT64. What I'm going to follow is the UCRT64. Select the GCC. Right, it will create one of the setting file which will tell from where we are going to use our compiler. And let's hit the run debug button and select the GCC path. As you can see, our program is working fine and it hit the debugger point also, and it has a print our hello world also. So now let's continue. Now let's try to run our C++ code as well. So now if you see here, the VS Code has created two files, setting files and task file. So task file and setting file both are responsible related to the configuration of the compiler. So if you go here, then you can see the compiler related information, and if you go to the task, then related to particular file, what all the commands are used to compile the file and convert into the binary. So now we are going to utilize the different configuration for C++. So now I'm just deleting these two files and let's try to run C++. So I'm just setting up using C or C++ IntelliSense configuration, and I'm just setting G++ for the our use case. Now let's run the debug button. The first one. Yes, in C++ code also the output is the same, hello world, and it is as you can see in the terminal window. So now let's continue. So using the first method, just now we have set up our environment. Now let's go through the second method. Here you should download the toolchain from the website directly. Already pre-built toolchain is available on the website like the WinLabs. So you can download directly from here. On the WinLabs website, we have two type of the downloads available, UCRT and another one is the MSVCRT. It depends upon your use case. Either you want to use VCRT or MSVCRT. So I'm downloading currently 64-bit zip file with the latest version of the GCC. I'm going to the folder. Once the downloading is completed, then we need to extract the files. So once it is extracted, then you can go to the folder, go to the bin, and here you can find the GCC and G++. GCC and G++. Now let's set up our environment to run using MinGW64. We'll go to the Visual Studio Code. Let's open the C. Let's delete these files. Let's configure our compiler and select the compiler from our machine. Let's go to the folder. GCC, open and debug. Debug with our compiler. So our program is working fine. Now let's try to run the C++ also using G++. Let's delete these files or let's update the path G++. Then save. I will delete this task. I will try to run the C++ and debug from this particular G++. And yes, output is giving the same way. Now let's try to go through the Visual Studio Community Edition and let's try to run our program in the Visual Studio. In my environment, currently Visual Studio Community Edition is installed and all the required C++ related setup is already been configured. Now let's open the Visual Studio. Let's create a new project. C++ empty project. Now let's create the project name with the test C. And now let's include our source file. Hello world source file. I am copying the path and including it to the source file. Now let's run and debug it. So my hello world is printed in the output. So my program is working fine. Let's continue. Now let's test the C++ code as well. So I'm creating another project. Empty project. Test C++. Create. And let's include our C++ file in the source. Copy path, going to the Visual Studio and adding the source file. Adding the existing item. And now let's debug. Yes, hello world is printed in the output. So now let's continue. This is how you can run your C code into Visual Studio. Now let's configure our Visual Studio code to run with a Visual Studio compiler. First of all, we need to open the Visual Studio development command prompt. And we need to navigate to the repository. We will close our Visual Studio code. Now we will open Visual Studio Code from developer command prompt. After opening the VS Code, we will go to the file and we will just delete the existing setting files. Let's configure IntelliSense. Here you can see the cl.exe. We'll select cl.exe and let's debug. cl.exe. Yes, it has stopped at the debugging point, so it is working fine. Now let's try to run our C++ as well. Debugger is hit at the breakpoint, so C++ code is working fine. Now let's try to compile our CUDA file having the same source code like the other C++ file. We are going to compile this CUDA file in our NVIDIA CUDA compiler. Let's copy the file path. Let's close the Visual Studio Code. We need to open the VS Code 64-bit command prompt. We are navigating to the repository directory. Let's open the VS Code. Let's open the terminal. Let's navigate to the file path. Let's compile the file and run our code. As you can see, hello world is printed in the command line, which means our CUDA code is also working fine. There is a way to compile our CUDA file using VS Code settings. Here you can see the VS Code folder and we have three setting files: launch, settings and task. Setting file contains the compiler related path information. In the task, we are setting up the commands to compile our file and generate our output application. In the launch.json, we are setting up the arguments to start our application in the debugger mode. Let's try and run the file. We need to select the debug and we need to select the debug CUDA program. As you can see, the debugger point is hit and output is available in the terminal. Now, as a last part, we will go to GitHub Codespace and try to run our code in the VS Code after connecting to the GitHub Codespace. As you can see, I am on my GitHub account. Now I am going to create GitHub Codespace. I'm going to the code and creating the Codespace on the development branch. It is possible to use GitHub Codespace in browser as well. Let's go to the GitHub Codespace website and let's refresh it. As you can see, the virtual machine is up and running. Now I'm going to connect this machine with my Visual Studio Code installed in my local system. GitHub Codespace is basically a virtual machine hosted on the cloud. The operating system for that is considered as a Linux. Let's open our file and let's run. To run the file, we need to install the extension. I'm installing the extension in the code space. After the installation, you will see this debug button on right hand side. Let's run and debug our code. You can select GCC. If you go to the terminal, you will see the output and debugger point is hit. Let's continue and let's try with the C++ file. As you can see, some task is already been added related to GCC. Now, if we try to compile C++ file, then it will fail. Because to run our C++ code in GCC, we need to add extra argument lstd C++. After this, if we try C++ code debugging, then it will work. As you can see, output hello world is available. This is most important to combine our C and C++ code into the same project. However, the same things we are going to discuss more in detail with progressing the tutorials. On the GitHub Codespace, it is not possible to compile and test CUDA files as the codespace are not having NVICC compiler. As a conclusion, setting up the environment is most crucial to start with the C or C++. In this tutorial, we have learned about setting up the environment using MSys2, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, and CUDA compilation. For the CUDA, there are separate processes. However, to show the third-party compiler, it was demonstrated. Thank you. Hope to see in the next tutorial. Have a good day. Bye.